Today on Psycast, we're going to talk about something quiet, yet deeply unsettling: losing control of your mind. Have you ever felt like your thoughts weren't really your own anymore? Like your mind was somewhere else, fragmented, foggy, restless, unable to focus, unable to land, always drifting into distraction? Maybe you've caught yourself scrolling endlessly, switching between tabs, rereading the same sentence 5 times, wondering why you can't just think clearly like you used to. It's like trying to grab water with your hands. It slips through. You're there, but not really. Awake, but not truly present. This slow erosion of attention, this constant mental fragmentation, it's more than just distraction. It's a quiet crisis. Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." But what happens when what you do day after day is consume fragments of information you didn't choose, stories you didn't ask for, images you didn't want, but still watched? What happens when you no longer notice who's doing the choosing inside your own mind? It might sound dramatic to say your mind is rotting, but isn't that what it feels like sometimes? Like a slow decay of depth, a thinning of thought, a loss of silence. And it's not your fault. You didn't wake up one day and say, "I'd like to live in fragments." It happened gradually, quietly. A notification here, a video there, a reflexive scroll that became muscle memory. Until one day, your inner world no longer feels like a place you can return to. It just feels noisy, claustrophobic, full but empty. There's a hidden cost to this kind of overstimulation. And it's not just about wasted time, it's about identity. When you lose control of your attention, you begin to lose touch with your intuition. And when you can't hear your own thoughts anymore, you forget what you value, what you believe, what actually matters to you. That's how you become suggestible, not in some hypnotic, theatrical way, but in the quiet, everyday way that shapes who you become. You start to want things you never wanted, believe things you never questioned, mimic people you never truly admired. You live in reaction, not reflection. Jung believed that the psyche has its own structure, like a house with many rooms, and each part of us has a voice: the child, the critic, the protector, the shadow. But when we spend most of our mental energy chasing external stimuli, we stop visiting those inner rooms. We forget to listen. And the voice that grows loudest is often not our own, but the voice of whatever app, feed, or trend we gave our attention to last. This isn't about blaming technology or romanticizing the past. It's about recognizing something sacred that we're losing, and maybe remembering how to reclaim it. Because if your mind no longer feels like home, then your thoughts become strangers. And when your thoughts are strangers, you forget how to be with yourself. Maybe no one told you this before, but your attention is the most intimate thing you own. It's more intimate than touch, more powerful than words. Where your attention goes, your life goes. And if someone can control what you pay attention to, they can shape your reality without ever touching your body or your beliefs directly. They don't have to convince you of anything. They just have to keep you distracted enough that you stop asking deeper questions. It's easy to think we're still in control, that we're making conscious choices. But the truth is, our minds are being conditioned every day. Not by some grand conspiracy, but by repetition, by design, by the sheer weight of convenience. Algorithms aren't evil. They're indifferent. They don't care what you see, as long as you keep looking. And so, they feed us what hooks us, not what helps us. What stimulates us, not what stills us. Over time, this changes us in ways we can't always see from the inside. Carl Jung wrote about the danger of unconscious living. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Think about that for a moment. If you spend your day bouncing from one post to another, one video to another, without reflecting, without noticing how it makes you feel, you're not just consuming content. You're training your nervous system to live in a state of constant reactivity. You begin to feel anxious when things are quiet. You feel bored when things are slow. And gradually, your threshold for peace begins to shrink. Silence becomes unbearable. Stillness feels like something to escape from. And here's the part that hurts the most. You start to think it's just you, that maybe you've changed, that you've become lazy, undisciplined, forgetful, that your ability to focus, to read deeply, to stay with one thought has simply vanished. But that's not the full truth. It's not that you're broken. It's that your environment has been engineered to keep you in a state of perpetual drift. You're not lazy. You're overstimulated. You're not broken. You're disconnected from yourself. There's an invisible grief in this realization, a quiet mourning for the mind you used to have, for the depth you used to feel, for the way you could once sit and just be. And while nostalgia can be comforting, it's not where healing lives. Healing begins when we notice, gently, without shame, how far we've drifted. And when we begin, moment by moment, to return. Not by force, not by guilt, but by choosing, little by little, to reclaim what is ours. Our breath, our rhythm, our gaze, our attention. And by remembering that attention is not something we owe to the world. It's a gift we offer to what matters. Let me tell you something I once heard and never forgot. You become what you repeatedly consume. Your attention is the soil. Your thoughts are the seeds. That line changed the way I saw everything. Because for a long time, I thought I could separate who I was from what I exposed myself to. I believed that if I just stayed aware, I could scroll mindlessly for hours and not be affected. That I could binge the noise of the world and still find silence inside myself when I needed it. But I was wrong. We underestimate how porous we are, how open the human psyche is to suggestion, to imitation, to subtle emotional contagion. Jung spoke often about the collective unconscious, the shared psychic inheritance we all carry. But what's less often discussed is the way the modern world hijacks that inheritance. Instead of tapping into our shared humanity, we become tuned into shared stimulation. We feel what everyone else is feeling, not through empathy, but through exposure. We absorb the fears, the anger, the trends, the rhythms of the culture, not by intention, but by immersion. And here's the quiet tragedy. When everything around us is curated to grab attention, we begin to lose our capacity for depth. Our minds, once capable of reflection and reverie, become allergic to stillness. We read a paragraph, then check our phone. We watch a video, then open another tab. We crave novelty like it's oxygen. But it's not oxygen. It's an addiction to stimulation that slowly replaces the nourishment of real thought. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, requires solitude, silence, and integration. But none of those things are possible in a fragmented mind. You can't integrate what you're too busy to feel. You can't hear your intuition when you're drowning in input. And you certainly can't become yourself if you're constantly reacting to the world's noise instead of responding from your own center. There's a concept in psychology called cognitive overload, when the brain is flooded with more information than it can process. But the deeper issue isn't just about mental exhaustion. It's about identity erosion. When you never allow yourself to complete a thought, when you interrupt your own insight for the next ping or post, you don't just forget what you were doing, you forget who you were becoming. And I say this with softness because we're all in it. We all fall into it. Not because we're weak, but because we're human. And the systems around us are built to capitalize on that humanity. But awareness is the first crack in the spell. When you start to notice what your mind is becoming, you open the door to reshape it, to feed it different soil, to choose seeds that grow roots, not just noise. And maybe, just maybe, that's the beginning of remembering what it feels like to have your mind back. Sometimes, the most radical thing you can do is to pause, to stop in the middle of the noise and ask yourself, what am I giving my mind to? Not just today, but every day. What stories am I letting in? What emotions am I rehearsing without even knowing it? What kind of person am I becoming just by the things I repeatedly see, hear, and scroll past? Most people never ask themselves that, not because they don't care, but because they're too tired, too wired, too entangled in the momentum of modern life to remember that they even have a choice. But you do. You always do. That's the quiet truth we forget. Attention is a choice, and choice is where your power lives. We tend to think of self-control as a forceful thing, a battle of willpower, a discipline of the mind. But true control, the kind that actually frees you, doesn't come from force. It comes from clarity, from remembering who you are and then choosing what aligns with that. It's not about constantly resisting distraction. It's about becoming someone who no longer needs to escape themselves every 5 minutes. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But how can you become who you are if your inner world is constantly filled with the voices of others? If every empty moment is filled before it even begins, by a headline, a tweet, a video, a reel, silence is not just the absence of sound. It's the space where the self emerges. And if we're never quiet, we never truly meet ourselves. Here's the part that many people overlook. You don't need to consume more to find yourself. You need to subtract, to make room, to create mental emptiness, not as a void to fear, but as a space to return to. Because what you're really missing isn't stimulation, it's intimacy, with your own thoughts, your own memories, your own sense of direction. There's a reason we feel most alive in moments of stillness. On a walk, watching the sky, lying in bed in the dark. It's because those are the few places left where the inner voice can finally speak. And that voice, however quiet, is always there. It doesn't shout. It doesn't beg for your attention, like everything else in the world. It waits, patiently, softly, like a home with the lights on, just hoping you'll return. If you feel like you're losing your mind, maybe it's not because you're broken. Maybe it's because your mind is asking to be heard again. Not fixed, not stimulated, just heard. And maybe it's time to answer. So how do we begin again? How do we reclaim our mind when it feels scattered, overstimulated, pulled in too many directions? The answer isn't dramatic. It's not a grand reset or a digital detox posted online. It's much quieter than that, almost invisible. It begins with remembering that you're allowed to live differently. Even in a world that profits from your distraction, you're allowed to move at your own pace, to think slowly, to feel deeply, to choose what enters your mind, not out of fear, but out of care. Carl Jung believed that the process of healing was not about becoming better, but about becoming more whole. And wholeness doesn't happen in haste. It happens in the small, sacred act of returning to yourself over and over, without judgment. It means noticing when your mind drifts and gently calling it back, not punishing it, not resenting yourself for falling into the same habits again, just noticing. That's where power begins, in noticing without shame. There's something profoundly hopeful in that, because it means healing isn't far away. It's not some future version of yourself you have to reach. It's already here, waiting in the background of your awareness, in the space between thoughts, in the breath you're taking right now. You don't have to fight your mind to reclaim it. You only have to become present enough to meet it again. Maybe that looks like setting your phone down for a few hours each day, not to prove a point, but to feel what returns in the silence. Maybe it means going for a walk without music, letting your thoughts wander freely without trying to optimize the moment. Or maybe it's simply sitting still, eyes closed, and asking, what's really going on inside me? Not what the world says I should feel, not what I just consumed, but me, here. Now, you won't get a perfect answer. That's not the point. The point is to practice intimacy with yourself again, to be curious, to become a student of your own mind. Because what we practice, we become. And if you begin to practice presence, even clumsily, even inconsistently, you will slowly become someone whose mind is a place they can trust again. A place of depth, of clarity, of truth. This is not a quick fix, but it is a true one. And in a world so hungry for speed, choosing depth is a quiet form of rebellion. A way of saying, I will not abandon myself to belong to this noise. I will not outsource my thinking to algorithms. I will not let the most intimate part of me, my attention, be owned by anything that doesn't honor who I truly am. That choice, repeated daily, becomes a kind of freedom. And from that freedom, something incredible grows. A mind that feels like home again.